My 31-year-old wife told my 2-year-old that thunder was from when the clouds bumped together. I told her to tell her the truth and she looked at me puzzled. That's not what happens, Reddit. What other things were you appalled to learn grown but adults still believe? My neighbor of 22 years, my entire life, is in her mid-40s. She believes that eggs are manufactured in factories. Not that they come from chickens and are simply processed in factories, but that they are made from base materials in a factory by human machines. We passed a sign on the side of the road that said 1 dozen chicken eggs $1 and she made a noticeable ugh of disgust. Puzzled, my mom asked why. Ugh? Neighbor, I can't believe people actually eat chicken eggs. Mom, you eat eggs all the time. Neighbor, those are the white eggs from the factories, not the brown ones from chickens. We spent the next half hour in the car trying to convince her that eggs were not manufactured. Still don't think she was convinced. She also believes turkeys are just big chickens. This reminds me of when I played Little League Baseball. I had a habit of eating sunflower seeds whole, shell and all. My coach saw me do so and went on to lecture me about how I will get a splinter from the wooden shells they put on them at the factory so they stay fresh. I have a friend who believed until her early 20s that the entire act of sex required nothing but a casual removal of the clothing and the insertion of the penis into the vagina. And then nothing. Like two people planking on each other. Sounds like my ex-wife. When I was a prepubescent kid, I had seen heard of flavored condoms. Now the idea of someone using them for oral sex never occurred to me, as I thought condoms were only used to prevent pregnancy. So for a good couple of years, more years than I care to admit, I thought women could taste flavors with their vagina. Oh. I was going to say I wish we could, then I realized the implications. I knew a girl who thought internet just came from computers and you could get it anywhere because your computer was making it. Well, computers do make it, but she's wrong if she thinks a single computer can make the internet. One of my best friends called another friend a liar because he was Jewish and he and the rest of his family were originally from England. You can't be Jewish and British. I'm not an idiot, she scoffed. We explained it as kindly as extremely sarcastic 17-year-olds could. I worked with a girl who thought Norwegians were from a country called Norwegia. One of the girls in my class thought that a nuclear power plant was an actual plant. She basically thought that some type of specialized flora could produce such a large amount of energy. Facepalm. For whatever reason, probably to shut me up and give me an easy answer, when I was a kid my dad told me that the grades on gasoline at the pump was the year they were made. He's a smart guy, so I thought he was serious and from then on thought that was what gas grades meant. Fast forward to when I was 25. I asked my boyfriend what year gas he wanted in his car. He thought I was messing with him, until he realized I was serious. Then I learned the truth. My dad doesn't recall telling me that lie ever, but thinks it's hilarious he trolled me for a good 15 years. TLDR. I thought gasoline was bottled like wine. Hahaha, I love that. I hate to infer, but I feel like when you heard things about us using up all the gas and prices going up, you took it more seriously, because none of the gas is newer than 1992. I wasn't quite a grown but adult, but when I was 4 or 5 I was trying to learn how to whistle, so I asked my mom. She said eat the crust on your sandwich. I didn't get it. She said that's how birds do it. Birds eat breadcrumbs all day. That's why pigeons like bread so much. Helps them whistle, so I start eating the crust on my sandwiches. Previously my most hated portion of Samick. Simultaneously I keep practicing how to whistle and soon enough, I'm whistling like Otis Redding. Years go by and I'm eating the crust on my sandwiches, now by force of habit, and whistling like a champ. One day it hits me. That's not how birds whistle. She just wanted me to eat the crust on my sandwiches. It's not that I believed it all those years. I just never stopped to examine it. TLDR. My mom Lex Luthor'd me. Till Lex Luthor makes you eat bread crust. I was on a 6th grade school field trip at an aquarium. My mom went with us, and we passed by the seahorse tank and my mother gasped and exclaimed, "Holy freaking crap. Seahorses are real." Needless to say it was embarrassing. Have a friend who thought narwhals were imaginary. Sea life is weird looking. Once spent 20 minutes trying to convince a coworker that the sound of a fart comes from the vibration of your sphincter and or butt cheeks as the gas passes by. Finally just gave up. I guess she thinks there's a speaker in her butt. I need to get my speaker tuned. All of my farts are silent. I demand window shattering noises. Well, I was personally appalled to learn that 18-hour bras last longer than 18 hours. I don't know why I thought for some reason that they were a one-time use thing, and you threw them away after. I was at lunch friends, who asked me what I thought happened to the bra after 18 hours. I just said I thought the spandex gave way or it all just turned to dust. My father-in-law believes telephones are not electrical devices because they work even when the power goes out. Although I am a telecom engineer, I don't see any benefit in explaining the truth to him. This is kind of along the lines of OP. My ex-best friend and I were discussing post-sex habits and I mentioned how I always get up immediately afterwards to pee, to ward off UTIs, etc. She said she did the same thing as backup birth control, using sterile urine to kill sperm. She didn't realize that she doesn't pee out of the same hole she has sex in, and when she pees after sex it doesn't do a thing to kill the sperm already inside her. Never mind the fact that because something is sterile doesn't mean it sterilizes anything. I used to know a girl who thought the moon and the sun were the same thing. She apparently thought that the sun just got less intense at night. Ground control. Neil, the moon is about to turn on. Get off. Get the frick off the moon. RIP Neil Armstrong. I've met several people who had no idea where Oregon was or the fact that it was a state to begin with. One guy even asked me if it was located near Texas. He was from Texas. As someone from Oregon, I can confirm we are not near Texas. My sir was born and raised in a communist country and was never taught about how man had actually landed on the moon. I mentioned it one day in conversation. He was in his 30s and he thought I was making that crap up. I know some conspiracy nuts who think the moon landings didn't happen. It's baffling because it's such a strange thing to focus on as a conspiracy. I was bringing water to boil when my girlfriend told me to turn the element to medium heat otherwise I'd burn the water. My ex-girlfriend's mother thought that birch trees were white because they'd been struck by lightning. She's not the sharpest tool in the shed. She was looking kind of dumb with her finger and her thumb. My brother-in-law told my sister that he couldn't understand why people thought herpes was such a big deal. He said, I mean, it goes away after 7 years. Seeing my sister's confusion, he said, the 7-year itch. My 27-year-old friend thought if you catch your wife cheating on you that you can call the police and have her arrested for adultery. We live in America. I made an AskReddit post about this before. My girlfriend legitimately thought the Taliban were called Taliban and pronounced it like that for a decade unchecked. Her actual response was yeah, cause aren't they towel heads? I had a girl in community college try to convince me that we regularly carry out full-term, 9-month abortions. She also tried to tell me that Obama nationalized the banks in 2008. I moved from Florida to Michigan, my first year at school in Michigan, and we were talking geography and the definition of peninsulas came up. I mentioned Florida, and everyone in the class, including the teacher, laughed at me and told me that no, Florida is not a peninsula. When I insisted, they just laughed at me more. It's called the fricking Florida Peninsula. Group stupidity is the worst kind. Whoa, I just had a similar jaw-dropping, face-palming moment with my GF. She thought the moon emits its own light, so then I asked her what an eclipse is, and she blank-faced. BTW, she's going to be a teacher, and already works as a substitute, teaching your children. Obviously, it must be the sun blocking the moon's light. I have a freaking idiot best friend that was convinced an ostrich is a genetically engineered chicken camel hybrid. It took me and his whole family to convince him otherwise. His 12-year-old brother told him it was on Animal Planet. Congratulations, that is one of the dumbest things I've read on this thread. Tell your friend he is a special man. So I'm Indian, from India. Not feather. I dated this girl that asked me, why do you keep calling yourself Asian? I was like, "'Cause I am? What do you mean?" She said, "I thought India was in Africa. Isn't that why you're so dark?" I can't tell you how humiliated I am was. She couldn't spend even 5 minutes on Wikipedia. I dated a guy who was surprised when I told him I was still on my period after I had had it the day before. His response: "I thought periods only lasted for a couple of hours." Dear Jesus, if only. My ex was convinced that Rob Zombie was his birth name. The thought of a Mr. and Mrs. Zombie has always entertained me since then. On the day Curiosity landed, I discovered that my wife thought it was a manned mission. She was quite surprised to learn NASA had yet to send humans to Mars. She's not a big follower of current events. Hey, at least she was aware of and following the event. I know quite a few people that don't know or simply don't care that a rover the size of a small car has been fired at a planet 80 million miles away and then 8 months later it landed itself. I created an account just for this. I've been browsing Reddit, but never voicing out. When I was in high school, I started dating this cute girl. One night we got together and she let me stick my hands up her skirt. Once I got started, she grabbed my forearm and said, "Wait, I've never come before. I don't know what to do." I smirked and thought nothing of it until she said, "I don't want to get semen all over you." Immediately I pulled my hand away to reevaluate the situation. For a moment, I second-guessed her gender, which made no sense since I knew she had a vagina. So long story short, I had to teach a 17-year-old that women don't produce sperm. And this is why there should be a national sex education standard. My uncle was in a WAID border town that was in Washington state and he was trying to pay via check. About 13 years ago, the lady asked where he was from, because they cannot take out of state checks. He said Olympia. "Oh sorry, we can't take out of country checks." Took him a second before he realized she was thinking Greece. Olympia as in the capital of the state, not as in Greece. She had to call over a manager because obviously the capital of Washington is Seattle. Just like the capital of Oregon is Portland, New York is NYC, and California is LA. It's slightly sad when you don't know capitals or geography, but it's a bit of a double facepalm moment if you don't know the capital of your own freaking state. I dated a girl who didn't realize that the vagina and urethra were separate holes in her body, genitals. So, basically, she didn't know she had a urethral opening. She refused to believe me until she went to the bathroom to check. "Oh genitals, what are you doing here?" The number of times I have had to say this. American adults often believe the president can do anything. They don't understand the role of Congress or the Supreme Court. Therefore they put all the blame on the executive office, and mainly the president only. My dad doesn't seem to understand that even if Romney gets elected to office, he's not going to be passing much of it can't get out of Congress. Oh, and Obama is the devil because he created all the laws and Congress had nothing to do with it. My mom had a friend in college who still believed in Santa. He was 22 years old. Nobody bothered to tell him, including his parents. My 22-year-old GF just went on vacation in Florida and went to a sea turtle rescue. She was looking at the baby turtles and she asked one of the handlers if the guy could take the turtle out of its shell so she could see what it looked like. The guy just gave her a blank stare and politely informed her that turtles can't come out of their shells, that they die if you do that. Same vacation she excitedly texted me that they were going out on a boat to fish for freshwater tuna. I said, "You mean saltwater tuna?" to which she replied, "Oh yeah. Wait, what's freshwater then?" This may be buried, but I think I may have a winner here. My mom once told me that she doesn't believe space exists. When I asked her what the heck she thinks all those little lights are in the sky at night, or about how we've been to the moon, satellites, that at the time, were providing us with our TV, or, you know, the sun, she just shrugged at me and said she doesn't know. She just doesn't believe we're floating in space. It's been a never-ending source of entertainment for my friends and I ever since. Update. Holy crap. I really thought this'd get buried under all the other ridiculousness in this thread. Anyhow, for clarification, this event happened around 10 plus years ago near the end of my high school career when we were just talking one night. So it's entirely possible her views could have changed in the interim. To answer some of the question's accusations, she actually is a fairly left-leaning Democrat. She isn't religious in the slightest, and though it may shock you, she isn't retarded. She is, however, one of the most obstinate people I've ever dealt with. It's almost impossible to debate anything with her, because once she makes her mind up about something, that's pretty much it. However, this was all counterbalanced by neither of my parents ever foisting any of their rational or irrational beliefs on me or my sibling. We were never forced into anything and encouraged to think for ourselves and make up our own minds about stuff. By and large, she and my dad were actually pretty great parents. She just happens to have this one and probably others I haven't discovered, irrational theory, if you'd call it that I suppose, amongst plenty of other perfectly rational thoughts. I've only ever just laughed about it, because 1. I know there's no changing her mind on the subject, and 2. Because she's never attempted to coerce me or anyone else to her point of view. I kind of want your mom to do an AMA where we all ask her questions about science. My dad once told me that the road sign "Watch for Falling Rocks" was about an Indian boy who was named Falling Rocks and ran away from home. Every time we drove through the mountains I'd look for him. I know a girl that is about to graduate from college with a communicating degree, and she recently told me that the sky is blue because it is a reflection from the oceans. We live in Colorado. I was told that by a teacher in school. I got married in 1993. My wife said, "We have to do everything we wanted to now, because the world will end in 2000. Spoiler alert, it didn't. My mum was convinced that phones get their signals from satellites until me and my dad explained about cell towers. She looked genuinely amazed. Yes, I know satellites are used for backhaul on the phone network, but I'm talking the actual link to your phone. My roommate while I was deployed and I were watching the Olympics and a Russian chick won something and draped the flag over herself to celebrate, and my roommate says, "That ain't the Russian flag. He thought the Russian flag is a red thing with a sickle and hammer in the corner." In 2012, this man is a registered voter. Well, I'm sure there are some underfunded country schools that still have maps with USSR on them. Much like my elementary school, circa 93. This is hardly relevant, but it seemed like a good time to share a funny story. My dad used to take my younger brother and I to our family camp for weekend fishing trips. The camp didn't have any power, so we ran our stereo and a small TV off our vehicle's battery. As soon as we'd arrive at the camp in Dad's truck, my dad would tell us he had to go for a drive to charge the battery. When I grew up and started bringing my friends to the camp, I used to follow Dad's example and take the truck for a nice long drive after arriving so we could blast tunes all night. One time my friend pointed out that we'd just driven an hour to get there and the battery was already charged. Done. The next day I questioned my dad, who promptly said, "Oh, right. I should have told you years ago that was just an excuse for me to go smoke a joint." I was dumbfounded. A few years ago my wife made a comment about cavemen hiding from dinosaurs. I laughed at what I thought was a joke before realizing that she was serious. I thought so as a kid. It's a common depiction. Flintstones, Far Side, etc. Sun rotating around Earth. Seriously. Also, stars being planets. Person being shocked when I told stars glow for themselves, not knowing that there are many galaxies and galaxies consist of stars. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.